Welcome to the LA Steel Show. I'm Leila, your host for today's show. We're in Lakeville, Connecticut, standing in front of the Holley Williams house. And today we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Salisbury Association. We have a very special event. We're going to have a Revolutionary War reenactment by the group, and I have to take a look at it on my information, the 2nd Continental Light Dragoons. They have a Revolutionary War re-encampment inside. Let's go in and take a look.
Good afternoon, madam.
Good afternoon to you.
Welcome to the Holley Williams House and Salisbury Cannon Museums. It is a pleasure to have you with us this day.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I love your outfit.
Why, thank you, madam. I must say that your clothing is quite unique.
Oh, it is.
And that would be for my time and not for yours. Permit me to introduce myself. My name is Allen, Heman Allen, at your service.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Allen, and I'm Leila Wood from the LA Steel Show.
The pleasure is all mine, madam.
Thank you.
May I introduce you to some of our exhibits here on this very special weekend here at the Holley Williams House?
Yes, I'd love to see some, and I particularly am interested in the special event that you have today, the 2nd Continental Light Dragoons.
Indeed, Sheldon's light horse, madam.
Yes.
Yes, Colonel Sheldon is actually a resident of the town of Salisbury. Did you know?
No, I didn't know.
Indeed he is, madam. He was once a horse farmer down at the bottom of what is now known as Smith Hill.
Really?
Indeed, madam. He was also a lieutenant colonel in the Connecticut militia. He commanded a regiment of light dragoons for the Connecticut militia before his commissioning by the Continental Congress.
Well, that's very exciting, and maybe we'll take a look at this encampment. Is that it over here?
Indeed it is, madam.
Well, thank you. Will you come with us?
I would be very honored.
Thank you. We're standing in front of the 2nd Continental Light Dragoons encampment, and you have someone to introduce me to.
Indeed I do, madam. May I introduce you to the commander of the 2nd Continental Light Dragoons, Sal Tarantino.
How do you do, Sal?
Leila?
Pleasure to meet you, Leila.
Nice to meet you. So tell us a little bit about why you're here today and what your plans are.
Well, today we're here to help celebrate the town's association, the Salisbury Association 100th anniversary. And we're here to support and promote the Holley House Museum and the Salisbury Cannon Museum, pieces of American heritage that are uniquely Connecticut's.
Excellent. And you're going to have a revolutionary reenactment a little bit later?
Well, yeah, a little bit later we're going to actually do the real drill. We're going to have the fellows drilling on foot and on horse, and while we're speaking, the fellows are getting the horses prepped to pull out and groom up and go off on a patrol here into town, see what we can find.
Well, that sounds very exciting. Tell me a little bit about your group, how many members you have, and a little bit about the history.
Well, the history is that we were founded in 1776 by order of General Washington. We were a light horse militia unit from the state of Connecticut sent to aid Washington himself, and we were promoted and commissioned on December 12, 1776, served throughout the Revolution, and for the last 4 years of the war, the second half of the war, we were Washington's personal bodyguard. And the French remarked that anywhere he went, we were there with him.
Well, that was quite an honor for this neck of the woods to have a light unit be so honored.
We thought so, and Colonel Sheldon was right from this town, Salisbury.
Madam, with your permission, I shall take my leave. I see that I have some visitors to greet, and then I would welcome the opportunity to visit with you in my shop.
Oh, I'll look forward to that. We'll see you in a little bit.
The pleasure will be mine, madam.
Thank you.
Good day to you. Sir?
Good day, sir.
We're standing in front of your flag. This is just beautiful. Can you get that on the camera? And this is the original flag?
The original hangs in the state capitol of the library. This is a duplicate of it, right down to the materials and paint. And we were given permission by the state to copy it exactly and to carry it wherever we go.
Oh, well, it's absolutely spectacular. Do you know who designed it?
We really don't. We have found some sightings from the French, and we know that the officers in the unit had worked on it. And that's all we know. That's significance. This does date back to the period of the Romans.
Oh, it does. So there is some symbolism there.
Yes, there is some symbolism. In fact, the 10th Roman Legion, one of Caesar's favorites, had the same design. You see it on their shields.
Oh, well, that's an interesting fact. There's some wings there, and I'm sure that people at home would be interested. Wings, and what is this in the center?
We don't know.
Oh, you don't?
Absolutely. That's the thing we're hoping someday someone can explain to us. But it looks like lightning going across the globe, the Earth.
So if there are any historians out there who maybe have the answer to that question, please get in touch with us and let us all know. It's a very interesting kind of symbol, though. Very interesting. Yeah, it does kind of look like the Earth, doesn't it?
It does, with the blue and the black ground behind it.
I understand that you have quite a few members in your group. How many do you have actually?
Well, right now we have 12 men, 6 women, about 8 children, and we are taking in 3 new recruits shortly.
And what are the qualifications for becoming a member of your group? Obviously, do you have to be able to ride?
No.
No.
We're looking for people to serve on foot, so those that do ride can mount the horses and be out more active with the animals. We require an interest in history, an ability to educate others, a willingness to travel, and having to be able to give up 7 weekends to 8 weekends a year to do this.
And is this obviously a spring and fall and summer pursuit? Do you do things in the winter too?
We're all year round.
Oh, you are?
Last winter we crossed the Delaware with Washington, fought at Trenton and Princeton on horseback and on foot. It was very cold.
I'll bet.
That was the only time we were happy about wool coats.
So there are other groups like yourself in the country that you do this with?
There are a lot of groups. We work with the reenactment community, although we're an actual reactivated unit through the governor's office, and we're recognized by Congress as the descendant unit, the original Dragoons. So we're the actual unit. We're still the cavalry. We're ceremonial today. We're not going to go out and fight wars. But it was interesting because we all watched what happened recently in Afghanistan, seeing some of our forces and some of our members out west belong to that.
Oh, actually part of that? They were
them
called
showing the guys how to ride horses and going back in as the cavalry was very interesting. And in fact, they've adopted our colors here as part of their colors when they make their missions.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So
what an honor.
Yeah, we're
proud. Although you were cavalry, you never know when that information and those skills will become useful.
That's right. We were, in the time of Washington, we were the intelligence force and the special forces then, and today we have the same thing in the United States Army.
Now, you said you were actually activated?
We're on reactivated duty. We have the proclamations, which is, again, that's to help the community celebrate, allowing us to be the real military unit there as a presence on behalf of the governor to show the state support and promotion of a local event for the community.
Now, do you do things in Hartford with the governor as well?
On rare occasions. We have the foot guard and the horse guard to come first. We're kind of the bottom of the food chain.
I noticed behind us that there are a group of people from the Light Dragoons. Would like to meet them. Would that be possible?
Oh, sure. That's what we're all about, and they're all very dedicated followers. We'll take you in, we'll give you a tour of the camp.
Oh, good. Come with us. Well, we're inside the camp, and I understand you have somebody to introduce me to.
Yes, I do, Leila. This is Sergeant Eric Chandler.
How do you do?
Hi, Eric.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And you have to go off and fulfill some responsibilities, I understand.
Yes, I do. We have to get the horses ready, and while we're doing that, Eric is going to give you a personal tour of the camp.
Oh, thank you.
And introduction to everyone here.
Well, we'll see you later.
We'll see you later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, where'd you like to start?
Well, Eric, I'd like to know what your role is, your revolutionary role is.
I am the sergeant of the regiment. At the moment, I'm the number 2 to Sal. I'm also the unit adjutant. As such, I'm responsible for running the dismounted squad when the horse troops are out, and I perform clerical functions and perform as Sal's assistant.
I noticed there's someone sitting over here. We have some women who are involved in this too. Could you introduce us?
Certainly. This is Liz Henderson. She is Sal's sister-in-law. Sal's wife, Carol, has momentarily disappeared.
Now, where's she went off to?
Liz takes care of making sure we're fed during the day.
So that's your role, your revolutionary role.
Predominantly is as the cook, but the women wind up covering a lot of bases. So we do sewing, and until we had a surgeon, we filled in if somebody got hurt. We do a lot of the horse care, and pretty much anything that needs to be done. We go fetch and help clean and do all of those things.
Will you stand up for our viewers so we can take a look at your outfit? Is this traditional?
None too clean camp clothing. Yes, this is very traditional. Layers and layers and layers of clothing.
Ah.
And in fact, because of the heat, I'm not wearing one of the most traditional of all garments, which was the stays.
Oh.
A corset would have been, in addition to everything I am wearing, which is a sort of a combination blouse and slip that goes all the way down to here, and a full-length skirt and stockings underneath, and this fitted vest over the top. I would have had the layer of stays to provide proper posture and support to me as a lady at the time.
Now, your outfit, did somebody make it for you?
I made it for me.
You made it yourself?
You can buy these things, but they're not readily available. It's much better if you make it yourself. You can get it to fit you properly. At the time, everything was made individually and personally. So I would, as a lady of the time, I would have been making my own clothes, and they would have been fitted to me personally.
Well, it's very attractive on you.
Thank
You did a great job.
Yes, you can tell after a while.
And you've been working hard.
They tell you, in fact, when you go into the hobby, not to get your clothes too clean, because then they don't look authentic. Because a lady of the time would have worked in the clothes, and they would have become stained and dirty, and a little frayed and worn. And
I noticed you have a different hat as well.
Oh yes, that's my daily wear-around hat. The straw hat was very commonly worn, and I am decorating it with a couple of colored feathers, just to gussy it up a little bit. A lady wore her head covered at all times, and tanning was not considered proper. A pale complexion was desirable. Tanning was considered to be very low class.
Well, I
So
think we're
women
kind of
would
getting
wear
back to that now, where people aren't tanning.
Well, we've learned that there's a health reason for it. Back then it was purely cosmetic.
Oh, it was.
But they would try to cover themselves up, and you didn't want to be tanned because that meant you were a working person. So you tried to protect your complexion as much as possible.
That's very interesting, and I'm glad that we've gone back to that. I wanted to ask you, though, how did you become involved in this? There's a little family connection, I
They
understand.
got the tip of my little finger and pulled. Seriously, I went to an event. In fact, now that I remember it, it was here. This was the first event I ever came to. We were here opening the Cannon Museum. And Sal needed some additional people to come and help out. And I said, well, I'll borrow some of Carol's clothes. Now, I had never been.
Now, Carol's your sister-in-law.
And I said I would come and help, having no particular interest in American history. But I said I would do some food. I'll bring something for us to eat. And in thinking, what would they have eaten? I was hooked. That was the thing that got me going, was to say, well, what kind of foods did they have? How did they cook them? How did they serve them? And before I knew it, I was head first into it.
So how long has it been for you that you've been involved?
6 years.
You really are committed then.
Yeah,
You
6
did
years.
get involved. Well, I noticed you still have some sewing to do.
Oh yes, in fact, the sergeant has an article of clothing called guards that protect his knees and the upper part of his calf and lower thigh when he rides, and he needs new ones, so I'm making those for him.
Well, thank you for taking
you very
time
much. Thanks for
away
coming
from
out.
your sewing.
Stopping out to see us.
And I see something interesting behind you. I thought maybe we'd go and take a look at
Well, follow me.
the camp doctor, I presume?
That's correct.
Can you come through the herbs to talk with us? And I love your hat, by the way.
Thank you.
And you're Bob?
Bob.
I'm Leila.
How are you?
Good. Thanks for talking with us. Do you have some things that you might want to tell our viewers about here?
Sure.
Some of the herbs and what they're used for?
These may be familiar to some of the people. They're poppy heads.
Oh.
These are not opium poppy, but back in the Revolutionary War, this is the way the opium would have been delivered to the colonies, is in the heads, and then the apothecary would prepare them accordingly, what might be.
So that would be
Water
like an anesthetic?
Pain reliever.
A pain reliever.
Opium, even then, was known to make people feel good. When you couldn't do anything else for them,
That's what you
always made
gave.
them feel good. This is cascara.
And what's that?
It's the bark of a shrub that's grown
Doesn't smell.
down south.
Oh.
A lot of the herbs came up from south, and then there were herbs from up here that wouldn't grow down south because they didn't have killing freezes, and the perennials wouldn't grow well down there. Cascara is an excellent laxative, and even today it's still used. Fletcher's Castoria
Oh, yes.
is primarily cascara extract,
Oh, okay.
sweetened and flavored. The liquids here, most of them are not of medicinal purpose themselves, but what they are is used as a vehicle for delivering the different herbs.
For the different herbs.
Right. What you were just touching here, this is honey, which enough of it made almost anything palatable.
Made it taste good
Right.
anyway. Sweet.
But also they did use vinegar. They knew of the astringent quality of it. This is rum, this is whiskey. You know, you didn't just have to go to the pub in order to get.
This must be very popular. There's not so much left in there.
No, that's all I had left
That's all you have.
to put in it. Molasses, which of course was very plentiful
Right.
back then.
And good for you too.
Right. This is grain alcohol. Today they call it 190. Back then it was called sugar alcohol.
Oh, what would that be used for?
This
Cleaning?
Is used it can be used for cleaning, but it was used more for mixing some of the herbs. The essential oils wouldn't come out in water. but it
Oh,
would
okay.
Come out in alcohol.
in alcohol. Okay.
And the last bottle over here is something that the Indians introduced us to, I mean, even 100 years before the Revolutionary War, and still in use today and still made here in Connecticut today, and that's witch hazel.
Oh, really? That's
Witch-
an interesting fact.
Witch hazel is an essential oil from the bark of a shrub that's native to southeastern Connecticut, and the only company in the world that still bottles it is Dickinson, and they're located in Norwich.
Oh. Witch hazel. Now that's very interesting. I had no idea, and I'm sure our viewers didn't know either.
Yeah. People growing up at my age, my parents always had a bottle of witch hazel in the house, and anything
Mine too, yeah.
anything that was wrong with the skin, so long as it wasn't bleeding,
You put
covered with witch hazel.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. I
And,
can remember that.
Even today, I still prefer it for insect bites, mosquito bites. It seems to do it so much better than calamine.
Oh, well, good. That's good to know. Well, thank you very much, and
You're
you've
very
been
welcome.
great. You've given us a lot of information, and I'm sure I'll be looking around for herbs around my house, and maybe some of our viewers will too. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
We've caught up with Sal again. He's on horseback, obviously, and this is Prince. And Prince is very typical of the kind of horse that was used. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about that, about the horses and about their size?
Sure. In the 18th century, the horses were a lot smaller. The breeding that we've done has come mostly with horses has come since about 1800 with the establishment of the Morgan horse breeding and things of that nature. The earlier horses, many of them were very small, around 13 and a half hands, which would be a large pony today.
Oh.
Washington ordered that the men use the biggest and best horses they could get, which were 14 to 15 hands. Today, 14.2 is the modern standard for an animal to be classified as a horse. So that would have been on the higher end scale of what Washington had. And Prince is a barb or an Arab, as we're referred to, and these were very typical of what was used in this country.
Now, did you do the training of this horse?
This particular horse, I got him at 5 months, and we raised him, hand trained him.
Wow. And how long have you had him? How old is he now?
He was born in the end of 1985, and I've had him since May of '86.
I'm here with all the troops. Sal, would you introduce everyone?
Sure. This is Ralph Whitney, Peter Travers.
Hi.
This is a fellow we affectionately call Little John, but his name is John Koopman. This is Dave Thorne, and the man who makes everything happen, Eric Chandler, our sergeant.
I believe we've met.
Yes, we have. Now, Sal, I was talking to your wife earlier, and she was giving me a little additional history. Something about your group originally was the founding of the Secret Service. Is that true, or had an influence on it? Can you explain a little bit of that to our viewers?
Sure, we can, and a lot of the fellows can chip in on this. The 2nd Dragoons were chartered originally to do scouting and patrolling, and within that, Major Talmadge of the group received special assignment from General Washington to help organize a intelligence service going between Connecticut and Long Island, which was in the hands of the British, and put the Culper spy ring together. And only recently, in the past 15 years, that they realized that one of the spies was actually the assistant editor of Riveting's Gazette. And
I don't know what that is.
Riveting's Gazette was a paper that was used by the British as their propaganda means for how well they were doing here in the colonies. It was published on Manhattan, right there with the British command for the entire British Army doing the various activities of the war here in the colonies. So this was being able to say that we had somebody right at their back door writing down notes of everything they had to say.
British officers were more than happy to talk to the writers, because it was like getting mentioned in dispatches, which counted towards being noticed in Government House back in London and promotion.
And I guess they were a bit overconfident.
Just a tad, as it turns out.
Which turned out very well for us, otherwise we all wouldn't be standing here in this way.
Or we might be wearing red coats.
This is true, and I like the blue very much.
Heavens,
it's very
we're late for tea.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add about the history you think our viewers might be interested in?
It was interesting that Washington needed a fast means of communication and express, and the first delivering of mail on a regular basis to him of messages of import throughout the war was use of the 2nd Dragoons as dispatch every 5 miles along the Connecticut coast in special sets of riders with the 2nd Dragoons to wherever he was in the field. And it formed what essentially would be today called a Pony Express. And they did that for over a year until the colonel complained that he was losing half the regiment delivering the mail for Washington, and we weren't getting the business of the war done.
Oh, so too much commercialism at that time, huh?
Well, the general is the general.
I think that's still true, too. So that's very interesting. And is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Well, John is working on a project right now for us about the 1st Cavalry Charge. This is the unit that performed the very first cavalry charge in the United States, and John has been digging into some of the information with some of the folks on it.
When you say project, what do you mean by that? Is he writing a book or developing some history for your group? Or
writing an article for the Journal of the Brigade of the American Revolution.
And is that an article? Explain that. I don't know exactly what that is.
Well, the BAR, or the Brigade of the American
Revolution. Come up here a little bit.
The Brigade of the American Revolution is an umbrella organization that takes care of several units and puts together big displays for the public and so forth. And they have a scholarly journal where it's encouraged for the membership to provide articles. So I'm putting together an article on a little-known fact that our unit, Sheldon's Horse, the 2nd Continental Light Dragoons, performed the first cavalry charge in U.S. history.
Oh. Well, we'll look forward to that. So where does this journal, is it in libraries, or where is it, where would you get it?
To the membership.
Just to the membership?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Eric. And I also know that you, Sal, you've just written a book. So besides riding horse, working in other fields, and writing articles, you're writing books as well.
The fellows have all been very helpful in that. Eric and Peter and Ralph, John, they've all contributed some information to me. And along with that, an original book that we found that was written by these men back then, and some original letters and diaries, we put together a book that gives us a day-to-day account of what the average dragoon did, or cavalryman. And it's different from anything else. It's a publication for people that are really into the research and wanting to know more than just the battles. This is
so people that are really interested in the history.
Present arms. Shoulder, arms. Take care to form a column of twos to the right, by the right wheel.
I'm here with Nancy Johnson. Today she's made a trip up from New Britain to help the Salisbury Association celebrate their 100th anniversary. And also you both are the co-chairs of the organization.
Yeah, no, of the
Holley Williams House, which is a committee. Oh, the Holley Williams House Committee, and which is a wonderful historic house, and they're all volunteers. And Nancy, thank you for coming all the way up and being with us to help celebrate.
Well, I'm delighted to be here to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Salisbury Association, because, you know, without these volunteer organizations, you would literally lose the history of an area. And what Tom and Dick have done is to make sure that the Holley House is in the front of the minds of the people of the surrounding communities, because it is an absolute treasure. First of all, when you go through it, you get a history of the economy of this region.
Oh, you sure do.
And furthermore, you find out that it was this part of Connecticut that saved America in the war against England, because they produced the iron that produced the cannons that went over the Ticonderoga Mountains to Fort Ticonderoga to hold off the British. And then also, didn't they, the cannons to keep the British out of the harbor in Boston. So, you know, there's a tremendous amount of history in this part of Connecticut, both in terms of America's history as a nation and as the founding of our nation and the growth of our nation, but also the economy and the changes in the economy and how they affected the people and the environment.
Yes, this place makes history come alive, and today we also have Sheldon's Horse Light Cavalry here. And Sheldon actually was from Salisbury, so it's wonderful. It's the Governor's Guard, and I think they're waiting for you. I know they're going to greet you. They're all dressed up and ready, and thank you so much,
Well,
Nancy.
That's very nice, and I want to thank Tom and Dick, because it takes so much time to mobilize people to keep an asset like the Holley House alive and well.
Yes, and we depend on contributions.
And what kind of events do you have there at Holley House that people can come to?
We have the Holley House is really the history of a family.
That's right.
And through multi-generations, almost down to the present day. And through that family, you get a complete history of the region with national implications.
That's right.
The Holleys were very active in the Erie Canal. They were active in the development of engineering, of mining, and beyond the local area.
Yeah.
So,
very impressive family. And people can take tours through the house?
Yes, there are tours with, in fact, there is Mariah Holley waiting for you up here.
In traditional dress?
In traditional dress.
And then you often have programs that are open to the public.
We have programs. We also have a second museum on site, which is the Salisbury Cannon Museum.
That's right.
Talks about all of the contributions of the iron industry here, the making of cannon during the Revolutionary War, and actually down through the Civil War.
That's wonderful.
It's really a terrific place, and I hope our viewers take some time to come and visit on a weekend.
I should say one other thing, that as the Congresswoman in this area, I've worked very hard to get money from the federal government for all the towns of this region to work together to do the base work. They're working with the federal government to study this area to see whether it should be declared a national heritage area. And what they're looking at is assets just like Holley House and the Cannon Museum and the tremendous history of this region. And they want to know whether or not this meets sort of a national standard of importance for history, for culture, for environmental significance, and preservation. And if we meet the test, if the study demonstrates that we have sufficient assets, then we will be designated a national heritage area, and that will give our towns and our organizations some better access to federal resources for preservation of historic places, for environmental projects, and for tourism and economic development that is appropriate and takes advantage of our historic and environmental and economic assets.
Is there anything that our viewers can do to help make that happen? Is there any?
Yes, they can contact.
Well, that's always very important, isn't it?
They need to support their local assets, like the Holley House. They also can contact the Holley House or the Historic Society to get in touch with this group that's doing the study, so they can give them ideas of things that are around them, because sometimes there are things kind of buried back in
Oh,
lands
yes, absolutely.
that nobody knows about. But there are old iron furnaces,
Yes.
there are Indian artifacts, there's a lot of important resources in this corner of the state, and people who are interested in this should get in touch with us, and we'll put them in touch with the leaders of this study.
That would
It's a very
be terrific.
exciting effort.
It's very important to preserve our history.
That's
very, very important, and I hope this happens for this area.
Well,
It
and
sounds
see,
like a positive thing.
What's so wonderful is if you preserve the right assets, you can teach your kids.
Absolutely.
If they go, then the kids lose any sense of what a great nation we were.
And we need to
are.
keep that continuity alive. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for taking your time.
Oh,
I appreciate
thank
it.
you.
And remember, contribute to Holley House and the Cannon Museum.
Thank you, Nancy. Oh. Eric, you had someone else you wanted to introduce us to.
Oh, absolutely. Somebody very important and instrumental in the unit. And not just because of her association as our captain's wife. This is Carol Tarantino.
Hi, Carol.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Carol, you might be interested to know, runs our picket line.
And what do you mean by picket line? When you say picket line, I think of somebody walking with a sign.
Well, the sign this time is the sign of the horse. The picket line is basically a rope where the horses are hitched when not being used.
Oh, okay.
Carol helps groom, helps tack, helps calm horses and riders, helps riders mount, helps riders dismount, keeps an effective communication between animal and man. I'll tell you, there's a lot of times when I'd be in a lot of trouble if it wasn't for Carol, when it's my time to ride. She is the captain's wife, and you might also be interested to know that they met through a horse activity.
Oh, well, that's interesting. And you're carrying it on, and you're...
Blame it on the cavalry.
Oh, blame it on the cavalry. One of the things that I was interested in, Carol, was something that your husband mentioned to me, was how recognized the importance of women, because they, in fact, were paid more than most men at that time.
That's correct.
So women were very valued at the time of the Revolutionary War, especially in the cavalry.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. The cavalryman was paid a third more than an infantryman. And
So a man on horseback was paid
1/3 more than a man on foot.
Oh, okay.
Or a man in artillery unit. And our ladies in the records, and we have the actual books, show a slash, which is an equal ration to the men. So whatever the men got paid, the women got paid in equal measure. In contrast, a lady who was following the artillery or the infantry would get perhaps 1/3 to 1/4 of what a man was paid. And out of this, she had to feed her children and herself and whatever else. So the fact that we received an equal measure with the men made us much wealthier by that standard, especially when you consider that our men got 1/3 more to start.
Very valuable.
Yes.
And so
yes.
actually,
equal pay for equal work, except we still do more than the men.
besides cooking, sewing, healing, the women in revolutionary times in Sheldon's horse-like cavalry took care of the horses. And Carol's going to tell us a little bit about a very important part of the cavalry, and these are the horses right here behind us. And I think their names are on this side. This is Bo. Tell us a little bit about Bo, Carol.
Well, Bo is 16 years old. He's a Polish Arab. He was used as for therapy riding, with these multiply handicapped individuals.
Oh.
And unfortunately, he did not enjoy that. He was not doing well at it. So his owner came to the very painful decision that she couldn't keep him anymore, so we were fortunate enough to purchase him.
Oh.
The others have a less pleasant story. This is Joshua here. Joshua is
Hey, Josh.
This Joshua is 18 years
Hey,
old.
Josh, come on.
And
Here, come.
he's
He's not
careful,
gonna
careful.
come.
You could lose some figures that way.
Oh, you think
if
so?
If he wants to come, he'll come.
Come.
He
Come,
says,
Josh.
No, I know you don't have any treats. You're not going to sucker me into that.
Oh.
But anyway, Joshua was extremely sick when we bought him.
Oh, he was?
And he was very high fever, very sick horse when we got him.
Where was he? Was he in owned by a private owner? Or?
No, he was in a person who sells them, a horse trader.
Oh, okay.
In their barn, and he had come in from out west somewhere, one of the Dakotas, I believe. I really don't know his history others from when we got him. And he was sick with what they call shipping fever, which basically they load him in a truck, they drive till they get there, and then they unload the horses, and
and the ones that survive.
They didn't bother to give them food, they didn't bother to give
really?
them water.
Oh, what a dreadful story. And so we've made him well.
The other two in the back, which probably are going to be out of camera vision because Josh is standing in the way. One of them is Aladdin. He's actually my belated wedding present. And he was being used at the same barn where we bought Joshua as a hack horse, a ride by the hour.
Oh, okay.
And he was turned out with about 30 other animals. Now, Laddie is not a fighter. He's a very mild horse. He won't push. And he was being driven away from the food.
Oh,
and
dear.
He was a walking skeleton, and we figure he was probably within a week or 10 days of being sold for dog food. So we got him.
He looks wonderful. It's too bad our viewers at home won't be able to see him because he's way in the back. But he looks wonderful and very healthy. I'm sure we'll get him in some other shots.
Hopefully.
So you've nursed him back to health as well.
Yes, I have, and he's my boy. The one in the back corner, which is totally out of shot because everybody's in the way, is Prince. And Prince was going to be sold for slaughter when he was about 9 or 10 months old.
Now, Prince is the horse that the lieutenant was riding.
Captain.
Captain.
My husband.
Pardon me,
yes,
Captain.
Yes.
And we talked to your husband a little bit earlier.
Yes,
and he rides Prince regularly?
Yes, he's the only one who rides Prince.
And why is that?
Well, the two of them are a team.
They have a bonding?
When my husband was looking for a horse, he had just lost his horse through an unfortunate accident, and he was looking for a new one. He was going through the pens where they keep the horses prior to sale, and this little 9-month-old foal came up and stuffed his head under my husband's arm and stayed there and followed him around. Prince chose my husband. And they said, okay, fine,
karma.
This is my horse. Well, Prince has been doing it. He is 17 years old this year, and he has been doing this since he was 3. So he probably knows the commands as well or better than most of the men.
So he's very experienced. The other thing, he's getting a little braver. I'm going to step back and maybe you can see him there.
Yeah, Josh is sort of in the way. Laddie is 20 years old. He's the oldest one we have. And that's sort of the history of these 4.
So what do you do to take care of them? Do you have daily chores to take care of them, or do you have someone else doing it?
Well, we have them at a private barn right now, and there's staff that take care of feeding them and cleaning the stalls and making sure they get turned out on grass.
The daily maintenance.
The daily stuff. We get over as often as we can what the work schedule allows us to get over and ride and tend to the horses. But we're the ones that make sure the vet comes out every year. They get a whole plethora of shots, including ones that are required by law and a lot of them that aren't.
That you think maintain their good health.
Preventive maintenance, that's what it is, and it's a whole lot easier to. We had a disease called strangles went through our barn, and it's extremely virulent. It causes the windpipe of the horse to close up because the glands in the neck swell up so much they actually suffocate the horse. That's why it's called strangle.
What a dreadful thing.
Our guys went right through it. Every other horse in the barn caught it. Our guys did not because of all this preventative maintenance we've done with vaccines.
So it's really important to listen to your vet and have some preventive medicine.
Yes.
So you do a lot to take care of your animals.
Yes. They get special vitamins and everything else in their meal every day.
Well, they all look so healthy and so well taken care of.
These are my children.
I was speaking to one of the men. I'm not sure if it was your husband or not. But he said that if the temperature gets above or the humidity gets above 85 degrees, that you really can't work the horses.
That's correct.
And that, for their own health and safety, you do your drills on foot rather than on horseback.
If it's 85 degrees and above and a certain level of humidity, the horses stop sweating. And they can't tell you the way a human does that, gee, I don't feel too good, or things are getting blurry, or I've got a headache. they will just simply collapse underneath you.
Really?
And you have
Very scary.
Yes, and you've lost a horse to heat stroke or heat prostration. So
you're very careful
very,
then.
very careful. Very, very careful.
Well, that's good to know. That's very comforting.
Unfortunately, we have to disappoint people sometimes, but we just say, for the sake of the horse's health, for the sake of the health of the men, I'm sorry, there's no show today. Most people understand.
Although you're not involved, I would think they would understand.
Hope they do.
Although you're not involved in the daily maintenance, you get over to ride them as often as possible.
Correct.
And do you practice your drills?
Yes.
You do?
Yes. We try to put the men up who want to ride. They ride the most, but I'm still there sort of coaching and helping from the ground, even though I'm not on the saddle. If there aren't enough riders for the horses, then I'll ride
Then you
one
put
of
them through the paces.
I'll ride one of them, and we do the formations. We're moving, the horses in 2s and 4s and following and turns and wheels and all the different commands that they have to know, which are very similar to the ones the men do on foot.
Oh,
they
wow.
learn it on foot, then they get on a horse and they do the same thing on the horse.
So who's the faster learner, the 4-footed beast or the 2-footed beast?
They're about dead even right now.
I think Carol's trying to tell us that some of the men might be having a little difficulty.
I'm trying to be diplomatic here.
Do you have a star among your horses who was a very fast learner, or are they all?
Well, Prince, of course, knows it because he's been doing it the longest.
He's very experienced.
Bo here has gotten to the point where he doesn't want to leave the battlefield. When we take him out on the battlefield, he wants to keep chasing people, and he wants to keep going after them and having the guns and the sabers and everything else. And when we go to leave the battlefield, he's turning around and trying to go back out there because he wants to play some more.
He's a natural, huh?
He loves to come out and play.
Isn't that wonderful? It seems that fate has given you horses that enjoy this, and because
very, very fortunate.
And because you give them great care,
don't push.
No wonder they want to. They're beautiful, and I hope the camera picks up how beautiful they are. Their coats are shiny, their eyes are clear, and they're very, very handsome critters. Thank you, Carol.
Thanks
they're so lucky to have people like you to care for them.
Welcome. Welcome to the Salisbury Cannon Museum.
Thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Can you tell the visitors, tell me what you would tell the visitors?
Absolutely. The Salisbury Cannon Museum is our museum of the 18th century. We have boxes on our walls that honor ordinary citizens such as ourselves who contributed in their own unique way to the patriot cause of the American Revolution. Marion Wolcott was Oliver Wolcott, the signer of the Declaration of Independence,
and also
his daughter.
Also the name of our local technical school in Torrington.
Exactly. Joshua Porter was a Salisbury resident. Elizabeth Freeman came from Sheffield, Massachusetts, and then Elisha Sheldon obviously was from Salisbury as well.
Oh, okay.
So almost all of them of the local area.
So Salisbury during the Revolution was a very, very important town.
Oh,
if they manufactured cannonballs, that was an important part of the Revolution.
Absolutely. It's thought by historians that some 45% of all cannon cast in America for the Patriot cause were cast right here in what was then known as Furnace Village.
Khaki, come on over. This is Khaki Schaefer, and she is one of the people who graciously gives tours of the Holley Williams house. Unfortunately, today we are not going to have a chance to go into the Holley Williams house. That's something we'd like to do in the future. But Khaki, maybe you could tell us just a little bit about the Holley Williams house.
Sure, be glad to. We do first-person tours and walk you through the home, talk to you about life in 1876 for women and different contributions the Holleys made to Lakeville and also to the United States history, and also talk a little bit about life in Lakeville at that time.
Now, when you say first person, is there a particular person that you represent when you give someone a tour?
Yeah, when I'm giving a tour, I'm Mariah Holley Williams. It's a mouthful.
Now, Mariah Holley Williams actually lived in this house. Was she the first?
She was born in this house. She grew up in this home. She was married in the home. She did move away, but did move back to the home, and she did acquire the home after the death of her mother. She is also the individual who saved all her letters, wrote diaries that we have found, so we're able to recreate a lot about life and her life through all that she saved for us, which is one reason why we like to impersonate her.
Because you actually, through her writings, get a real feeling for the character and who she was and what life was like. That's wonderful. Now, do you know how long this house was actually in the Holley family?
Yes, I do. 1971 is when the Salisbury Association acquired the home, and it was Mariah's granddaughter who passed away and willed it over to the Salisbury Association.
Well, that was a wonderful thing to do so that we could preserve this house and so much of the history of the town of Salisbury. And when talking to Nancy Johnson, who is just here, she certainly seems like she's going to try to do some things to help preserve old homes and historic places. That would be wonderful for our town, I think.
Definitely. And I think there's just a lot of history here that many of us don't know about, and it's amazing.
Maybe,
how life was.
yes, I think it's wonderful to be able to do that. It gives us a real connection to the past. But one of the things I'd like the two of you to do is to tell the viewers at home when you're open and how long you're open, and do they have to make appointments, or can you just walk in for a tour?
We are open every weekend in the summer through Labor Day weekend, 12 to 5. We will be open Columbus Day weekend. We do special exhibits, so be sure to read the paper or look around if there are different exhibits, because we're open for that. And we do open up if you call and make arrangements, because I've opened up on weekends. I've done Brownie troops and Girl Scout troops and Cub Scout troops. And we can talk about different things that certain
areas of interest to people.
About, yeah.
Oh, that's
so
great.
Can, you know.
And the Cannon Museum is open too?
Well, the Cannon Museum is open in conjunction with the Holley Williams House on weekends through the rest of the summer, again from 12 to 5. And unfortunately, because this is not a heated structure, we can't have it open during the winter time. But I do, Khaki and I together entertain school groups from time to time when school's in session.
Well, I think that's an important thing to know about. I hope you take some time to come out and visit the Holley Williams House if you're interested in 19th century history, or come out and visit the Cannon Museum, learn more about the Revolutionary War. And I think it's really important to support your local museums. Look around in your own community, go and visit them, support them, be a volunteer. I hope you come and visit us.
Fare thee well.
See you soon.
Present arms. Shoulder, arms. Take care to form a column of twos to the right, by the right wheel. Thank you for coming. Hurrah!